Welcome to this kind of quick tutorial on how to answer the FRQ coming up on your test on Thursday. We're having our first test and we will use a free response question. I will model all of my exams the way, or all of my tests the way the exam will be modeled in May. And so you will have one FRQ question, which is essentially a big essay question. But a couple of things that I wanted to get you through and remind you of before you get to Thursday. So SODA is an acronym. If you use SODAs, that's great. SODA, SODA, at the very least, is how you need to do this. And for two reasons. One, I want you to get in the habit of answering an FRQ this way. So it becomes a habit in May. Because when you take the test in May, the AP reader who will score your FRQ will see that this is the method that you're using, and they'll already know that you know how to answer an FRQ. If you didn't answer it this way, it gets to be a little cumbersome to grade these essays. So it's really mostly to get you in the habit of what you can expect in May. So SODA is an acronym to space, order, define, apply, and then a synonym if possible. So let's start with space. When we talk about space, literally we want you to leave some space in between the bullet points. And I'll show you an example of an FRQ here in a second. But when we talk about space, like whether you were typing it out, you would hit return like a couple of times. It says skip 5 lines. I don't think you have to hit skip that much, but on Thursday you're going to be writing these out in freehand, and so literally I want you to leave some space there, to maybe 2 or 3 lines at least, just some white space. You notice that on the exam, the FRQ directions will tell students not to skip lines, but that refers to skipping every other line. So if you were writing on paper on the lines, they don't want you to skip in between lines, but in between the bullet points is acceptable. Order. I want you to answer. Usually these are presented in like a scenario with a bullet point of essentially the vocabulary terms. Please answer them in the order that they are provided. Meaning, if this is like the first bullet point, answer that one. And then go to the second one and answer that one. If you don't know one, for instance, don't skip it and then try to make something up at the very end and add that one in at the end. If you don't know it, first of all, I'd say just give it a shot and try. But if you really just don't have any idea how to neither define it or apply it, then maybe leave some space, actually, like a chunk, like a paragraph-sized chunk on your paper, so you could come back and try it again after you got done with all the other bullet points. To define it. Now, on the AP exam in May, you will get 1 point for defining and applying. It's like an all or none. I think that's a little bit stringent, and so especially for this first test, I'm going to give you 1 point for defining and 1 point for applying. So that means if there are, let's say, 6 bullet points on the test on Thursday, that would be worth a 12-point essay, a 12-point FRQ. So I'm going to give you 1 point for defining, 1 point for applying it. Now, when I say define, you don't have to have it like word for word, but you have to give me enough of a definition that I understand essentially the psychological concept that you are getting at. So that would be 1 point. And then applying. You should be able to relate the term to the scenario or connect the terms to the question, paying particular attention to the instructions. Some instructions will have you set up like a research model, and then you have to apply it that way. Some will just give you a scenario, and we'll see an example here, and you just apply it to that scenario. And so if there's a person or an event or whatever it happens to be, you will talk about and basically generalize what that would look like. And this will make a lot more sense when we take a look at a sample FRQ. And then the last thing is synonyms. You should not use the term in the definition or the application alone. Use a synonym. And what I mean by that is this is not where I get so concerned, But what I noticed is like, let's say you were using something like an operational definition. And in your terminology, you said you need to define how, something is, research is the process and being able to replicate. But you used the word like definition to talk about an operational definition. Come up with some other word that could essentially mean the same thing, another synonym. So let's go to the example and I'll show you what I mean here. So this is on haiku. It's the example FRQ. Okay, so, oh, I think I just lost myself. Let me bring this back. Okay, I'll just leave it like that. So this is the prompt, and this is how I would answer. This is just completely for your benefit to help you understand how an FRQ should look and be answered. So Dr. Pepper, you like that, wanted to investigate the relationship between sleep and levels of alertness during class for American university students. She gave surveys, so pay attention to like the context of how this is being set up. She gave surveys to 150 college freshmen in her Introduction to Psychology course, asking them to report how many hours they slept each night during a 2-week period. Dr. Pepper also had the participants rate their level of alertness on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most alert each day at the end of class. Dr. Pepper compared the average amount of sleep reported by each participant along with their average score of the alertness scale on a graph to determine the data. The resulting correlation coefficient of for Dr. Pepper's data was a positive 0.89. Define each of these following terms and explain how each concept might apply to Dr. Pepper's research. Okay, so the first one is positive correlation. So you see these bullet points right here, correct? These are what I was talking about. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for my sake, this would be a 10-point FRQ. The first one is positive correlation. So I'd first define what positive correlation is, and then I would apply what positive correlation was to this scenario. So here's what positive correlation is. And then I said Dr. Pepper would find in her research that a positive correlation existed between the amount of sleep and the levels of alertness. That means, so then you have to explain, the more students slept, the more alert they were in class, and the less students slept, the less they were alert in class. That's exactly what you have to do. That's getting in, getting out. Define it, apply it, you're done. And then you notice I left some space. I left a little bit of space. The next one is informed consent. You would define informed consent. You would apply informed consent. In this case, it didn't say she had obtained a lot of informed consent. So in Dr. Pepper's case, if the study was done as part of the class assignment, informed consent only has to be obtained in order for the students to understand the point of the assignment and the purpose of the survey. If a student asked to be removed from the data but still completed the survey, Dr. Pepper must respect their wishes. And so this is part of that ethical method when you are doing research and collecting data. The next one measures the central tendency, define, and apply. Operational definition, define, and apply. And confounding variables, define and apply. And as you notice, I didn't have a concluding sentence or paragraph. I didn't have an introductory. Get into the FRQ, get out of the FRQ. I left some space in between here. So look at how I said operational definitions are carefully worded statements of the exact procedures or operations. Now there's where I put, that's where SOTAs comes in. When I talked about exact procedures, if I would have said the exact operation, that's still using the word operational in operational definition. So I said exact procedures or operations used in a research study. Okay, so this is what I mean by try to use a synonym when you're defining a word. All right, that should take care of how to answer an FRQ. Please ask any questions if we get to school and you're still a little bit confused, and we'll talk a little bit briefly on it on Wednesday before we do the test on Thursday. All right, have a good one. Bye.